And then if you recall back in September, I provided an overview of the impact of the current drought on our state, regional and local systems. There has been some development since then, so we'll discuss those. In addition, I'll provide an in-depth overview and update of the Integrated Water Master Plan or our infrastructure assessment. Next slide, please. And so this illustrates the two systems which are responsible for importing water to Southern California. It generally makes up about 25% of Glendora's water supply, depending on hydrological conditions. We have the Colorado River to the east, which stems from the upper Colorado River Basin. And you can see some of the key facilities associated with that system, Lake Mead and Lake Powell. To the north, we have the state water system in which water is conveyed through the California aqueduct as shown in purple. Next slide, please. And again, this drought is impacting both of our imported water supply sources and presents an arduous task in trying to plan for a 0% allocation from the state water system next year, as well as manage deliveries on the Colorado River in an attempt to mitigate the depletion of that system. And so as presented in my last report, the first ever water shortage was declared on the Colorado River system. This was back in August and prompted cutbacks for some states. And so all of these developments have led to a statewide emergency drought declaration. It began with 2 counties back in April and has since expanded statewide as of October 19th. And that has some implications for our community here in Glendora. So we'll touch on those later in the presentation. Next slide, please. And so with the next couple of slides, I just want to talk a little bit about how we got to where we are today and how this drought has progressed over time. Shown here is the drought monitor from water year 2020. 0% of the state was in a severe to exceptional drought. As a matter of fact, much of the state was not considered to be in any type of drought at this particular point in time. If we can advance one. And so at the beginning of water year 2021 or October of 2020, 36% of the state was considered to be in a severe to exceptional drought. And you can see the 2 basins associated with our imported supplies outlined in the white are within this 36%. So things are starting to heat up here. And if we advance one more. And so within a year, majority of the state is actively in a severe to exceptional drought situation. Next slide, please. And so how dry was 2021? The National Centers for Environmental Information has been ranking the precipitation totals for the past 125 years, dating back to 1895. And both imported watersheds received below average precipitation as shown by the shades of tan here. Much of the Colorado River shed was considered to have received below average rainfall. And this is even worse in California, where the Northern Sierra watershed observed its 3rd driest year to date. Next slide, please. And so in addition to below average precipitation, temperatures in California were much above average, and the watershed itself experienced record warm temperatures. In the upper Colorado River Basin, the entire basin experienced much above average temperatures. As a matter of fact, Sacramento downtown broke the record with temperatures up to 113 degrees in July of 2021. Next slide, please. And so consistent dry years coupled with progressively hotter temperatures tells the story of why we're not seeing adequate runoffs materialize from the various snowpacks associated with our 2 watersheds. This past water year, our peak snowpack was 72% in Northern California and 88% in Upper Colorado River Basin. However, the corresponding runoff was a mere 36% and 33% respectively. And so this large disparity between peak snowpack and corresponding runoffs has severely impacted several key facilities on both of our imported systems. This graphic shows the total water year runoff in Lake Powell on the Colorado River Basin. And as you can see, 72% peak snowpack versus 36% runoff is quite a large disparity. Next slide, please. And here, this is Lake Powell, and it shows the Colorado River Basin dating back to 57 years to 1964. As you can see, water year 2021, as shown by the green bar to the far right, was the 2nd driest year in history at around 4 million acre feet, and well below the average runoff of about 11 million acre feet. Next slide, please. And so Lake Mead is another key facility on this system. And this graphic shows its storage levels dating back to 1963. If you recall, back in August, the first ever water shortage declaration was declared on this system as a result of reservoir levels falling below the shortage level of 1075. And that initiated cutbacks for several states on the Colorado River Basin. Cutbacks for California will not start until shortage level 1045. And if dry conditions continue in its current trend, we are expected to hit that by the end of 2023. Next slide, please. And again, conditions on the state project system are very similar. Average runoff for Northern California, and specifically on the Sacramento River, is approximately 18 million acre feet. This year is projected to be the fourth lowest runoff. We're a little more than 5 million acre feet, as shown by the green bar to the far right. Next slide, please. And so, as many of you are aware, late last month, the historic atmospheric river drenched Central and Northern California with record-setting rains, and also Southern California to a lesser degree. But how did these recent rains impact our current drought situation? Shown here is what is known as the 8-station index, and this is a collection of 8 gauges in Northern California. And it's used as an indicator of potential water supply availability for the State Water Project. And so as you can see on this 8-station graphic, recent storms boosted us up to 15.6 inches as of November 12, as shown by the blue curve towards the bottom left. And this is well above normal precipitation for this time of the year. This is equivalent to 5 times the amount typically received in October. However, we have quite a ways to go. Average precipitation for the 8-station is around 53.2 inches, as shown by the light blue shaded curve. And just to contextualize this, during our wettest year on record, this was back in 2017, we received over 94 inches. Conversely, back in 1977, which was our second driest year on record, we received a mere 19 inches. Next slide, please. And so this is a couple of shots of Lake Oroville. This was taken in late October of 2021. The photo on the left is facing the southeasterly dam, and you can see the high power plant intake pipes in the background. If you recall, back in August 5th, this plant ceased operations for the first time in history due to low reservoir levels. It's expected that the plant can resume operations as early as December 2021, depending on hydrological trends as we round out the year. The photo on the right is facing north, showing the Bidwell Bar Bridge. As a result of these recent rains, Lake Oroville gained approximately 192,000 acre feet of water, or 32 feet rise in water level elevation. However, more storms are needed to really put a dent in our drought situation. Oroville will need an additional 604,000 acre feet before supplies in this reservoir can be available for the State Water Project allocation. Next slide, please. And so just to provide an update on the state's recent drought proclamation, on October 19th, the state issued a declaration extending the drought emergency statewide due to the worsening of drought conditions. The last proclamation added Los Angeles County and surrounding counties in Southern California. It really urges Californians to step up their water conservation efforts. It enables the Water Board to ban wasteful water practices, as well as directs local water suppliers to implement their water shortage contingency plans accordingly. And as we prepare for a possibility of a third consecutive dry year next year. And our community here in Glendora will look to further that action on this here in a couple of weeks. We'll look at our water contingency plans and see how we can modify some of that to adapt to the current drought. Next slide, please. So in addition to the statewide emergency proclamation, Metropolitan Water District also declared a drought emergency on November 9th, calling for local and regional water suppliers to immediately ration the use of water from the State Water Project system. And again, here, Metropolitan is really focused on those agencies who rely heavily on the state water system as outlined here. And we'll see what that looks like here on the next slide. So if you can advance to the next slide, please. And again, with the expectation of a 0% allocation from the State Water Project system, it's critical that those agencies who rely solely on the State Water Project system ration and manage their demand. And so shown here is Metropolitan's distribution system, and essentially breaks down how water is imported into our region. And you can see the location of our community as outlined by the black circle. If we can advance once. And shown in green is the State Water Project water, which enters the region through the west branch at Castaic Lake and the east branch at Silverwood Lake. These areas typically rely entirely on the State Water Project. If we can advance one more. And so shown in orange is the Colorado River supply. These regions generally rely entirely on the Colorado River water. One more, please. Okay, and shaded in light blue is what is known as blend operation, meaning they can receive both State Water Project and Colorado River water. As a matter of fact, if we can advance once, please. And so really over the course of the past couple of years, Metropolitan has completed a number of capital projects, which affords them to maximize Colorado River water during this time of drought and low State Water Project allocation. Our community here in Glendora is also impacted by this operational flexibility. Glendora is primarily a member agency to Three Valleys Municipal Water District. And in an attempt to preserve the state water system resources, Three Valleys has modified their operations as well. And instead of receiving the state water into their Miramar treatment facility, they are now taking Colorado River water through Metropolitan's Waymet treatment facility. Next slide, please. Okay, so we've discussed the state of our water supply in light of the current drought situation, as well as the responses from the state and the region. So where do we go from here? What's next for us? First and foremost, it's imperative that we have a unified message moving forward at all levels, local, regional, and state government. One which acknowledges the drought emergency and really supports the call to conserve water. Through the development of various programs, I know we've certainly made some modifications to our conservation programs here in Glendora, which Armando will report on his presentation. But really, as we progress, we must continuously develop new and innovative conservation programs to manage demands. There are a number of grants and state funds available for such programs. I know we're currently working with our finance department to complete an application for a grant promoting conservation projects. Now, additionally, we're looking to partner with some of our larger water consumers, such as schools and various other institutions, to develop a customized turf removal program, one which will substantially reduce demands. And lastly, it's critical that we continue to invest in our local water supply and system improvements. Next slide, please. And so really a big part of this system improvement is the evaluation of our existing infrastructure, specifically our wells. The city has a total of 12 wells within the main San Gabriel Basin, as shown on this map, located in Glendora, Azusa, and Urbandale. 8 of the 12 wells are currently active, as represented by the blue circles, and 4 are inactive, as shown by the red circles. The 3 inactive wells in Urbandale were shut down in the early 1980s due to groundwater contamination, primarily volatile organic compounds and other various pollutants. The 1 inactive well in Glendora was shut down in 2016 due to low production. And so a significant part of our infrastructure assessment is really evaluating what it would take to bring these wells back online to the extent possible. And what partnerships can we develop with our regional and local agencies? And what would that look like? What types of subsidies are available for projects such as this, which will introduce a new source of water to the region? And really, so that takes us into our next segment of this presentation. That is our infrastructure assessment update. Next slide, please. And so as you may know, under the City Council's approved strategic plan is a key initiative, which is a comprehensive water infrastructure assessment of our system, or an integrated water master plan, as well as the corresponding water rate study. This assessment will perhaps be the largest undertaking for our water system since the original build-out, which began as early as the 1920s, and really takes a deeper look at what we need, not only for infrastructure reliability, but also for water supply, to be able to sustain our community for the next 50 plus years. And actually moving forward, I'll be providing a quarterly report to our water commission to ensure that we not only keep them apprised on our progression, but also get their input and get their feedback, as we truly appreciate their feedback and recommendations. So if you can advance to the next slide, please. And so for this outline, we'll start off with the goals and objective of this initiative and what is it that we're trying to accomplish. And then really look at what that entails. Talk about the general scope of work and the processes involved in developing this assessment. And we'll also discuss the timeline we're looking at for this work, from the development of the RFP to the actual assessment. And finally, the implementation of the new rate structure. As alluded to earlier, this is a significant undertaking for this division. And really, so part of this work is evaluating our personnel needs and ensuring that we have capacity to be able to support this endeavor. And lastly, we'll discuss next steps. Next slide, please. And so, in looking at some of our primary goals and objectives for this water master plan, first, we want to make sure that there's enough water to meet the projected needs for the city. Also, we want to ensure that the city maintains its compliance with not only current regulations, but as well as future regulations that are going to be impacting the water system, taking into account operations, water quality, conservation, and also continue to improve and optimize the resiliency of the system and understand and prioritize the needs of our water system. Additionally, we want to develop a capital plan for the water system with the projected costs for the various improvements. And finally, continue to develop a robust and innovative conservation and demand management program. Next slide, please. And so this slide enumerates the critical components of this water infrastructure master plan and really provides a high-level scope of what we want to accomplish. We initially started out with a very general, broad scope of everything we wanted to include in this assessment. And then we worked with the various departments here in the city to really refine the scope and incorporate the needs and comments of other entities outside of public works. Again, the supply and demand analysis, evaluated the need and ability to diversify our water supply source. Infrastructure condition assessment. This is looking at our water disinfection plants, pump stations, storage reservoirs, and evaluating the need to modify, upgrade, add, or perhaps even remove some of these infrastructures. Another key component of this is the distribution system analysis. And this is the underground piping that conveys water from our disinfection plant and pump stations out to our homes and our businesses. And so it's imperative that those pipes are replaced before they fail to avoid unplanned emergency leaks to the extent possible. And part of that is evaluating the hydraulics as well as the storage capacity of our system. Capital improvement will be a significant part of this assessment, developing and prioritizing a number of improvement projects over the next 15 to 20 years, and the projected cost for those projects. And finally, water conservation. Hopefully all of us understand how important this is to our community, our region, and our state, especially in light of the current drought. And so as we evaluate our system, we want to also find ways to manage the demand through the responsible use of water. Next slide, please. And so the second phase of this assessment will consist of a water rate study, performing a water rate analysis that will evaluate the existing rates, develop a financial plan that can support the various improvements as determined by phase one of the assessment. And most importantly, evaluate the impacts of the proposed new rate structure to the environmental and to our community. And really a large part of this is engaging with the community throughout this process, ensuring that they understand the need to rehabilitate our water system in order to ensure continued reliable conveyance of water. And finally, all of this will culminate into a development of a new water rate structure, one which will take into consideration current and potential future rate regulations. Next slide, please. And so although the actual assessment process will just be 2 years, it will produce hundreds of millions of dollars worth of capital projects and a great number of programs with regards to conservation, operations, funding management, which will last over the course of the next 10 to 15 years. And so it's critical that we have sufficient staffing in place to be able to support this endeavor. And as some of you may recall, earlier this year, the Water Division underwent a reorg in which we reclassified several positions and associated salary ranges, really with the intent of providing a focus on water operations and using a cross-functional approach, allowing staff to be able to cross-train among the various teams in water. So this would essentially be an augmentation to that reorg. As we embark on this assessment, items highlighted in red represents either new or reclassified positions that is being proposed to support this effort. So starting on the second level on the far left of this chart is our conservation manager. This is recently a vacant position, a very important and necessary position, especially in light of the pending drought and the many conservation programs we're looking to develop over time as we carry out here in the city and in the water division. We are looking to commence this recruitment for the position as soon as possible. Additionally, we're looking to introduce a new position at the principal engineer level to manage our capital improvement programs as it relates to water. And the primary focus of this position will be to manage the many capital programs and projects that are slated to emanate from this water infrastructure assessment. Project objectives, scope, accomplishments, financial projections, etc. And we also have our water quality management analyst position, who will assist in safeguarding our water through scientific analysis and reporting to various state and national regulating entities. Again, this is a critical position for us. Currently, this task is being managed by our water production supervisor, who will most likely need to focus his efforts on operations as we develop additional capital projects for this assessment. And lastly, we are proposing to add a lead production operator. Currently, all of our positions in this series are either an entry or junior level position. A lead operator would be an advanced level classification responsible for performing the most complex work assigned to this series, serving as a crew leader out in the field, and also provides a sense of career progression for the entry and junior level classifications within this series. Next slide, please. And so shown here is a high-level timeline of what we're looking at for this entire assessment process. And the first process is the development of the RFP, which was completed and published late last month on October 28th. Next, we've allocated about 6 weeks for the advertisement and selection of a qualified consultant to conduct the assessment. Built in this is an optional pre-proposal or Q&A session as represented by the blue tile. And really gives an opportunity for the consultants to ask clarifying questions, seek additional information or resources, or perhaps inform us of something we may not have or may be missing and may need to include as an addendum. We will then return to your council and commission at the top of next year to award the contract to a successful consultant. And this brings us to a third process, and that is the actual assessment work, in which we anticipate will take approximately 8 to 12 months for the infrastructure assessment, but another 5 to 7 months for the rate study. Thereafter, we will then come back to your council and commission for the implementation of the rate study. Of note on this slide is the rate study process is the 2 green tiles. As alluded to earlier, public outreach throughout this process is critical. And hence, we've built in 2 community outreach meetings. And again, the objective here is to really keep our community informed as to why we're undertaking this assessment and the need to rehabilitate and or replace our infrastructure and secure a diverse water supply to sustain us moving forward. Next slide, please. And so that concludes my presentation. And I'm ready to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Chisholm. Now, it was great. A lot of very valuable information, sobering information, looking at the state of water. At this time, I will call on council members, and then I'll turn it over to Chair Nakano to call on commissioners. Councilmember Alawas.
Thank you, Mayor. Chisholm, outstanding report. You kind of read my mind with all the questions that I was going to ask, and you answered a majority of them. So thank you very much for well done. Are we coordinating with any of our sister agencies and or like Azusa that has their own water company and to coordinate, because we're drawing from the same well basically, and we have to manage this together? Are we working together with these folks?
Yes, that is the plan. Currently, we are waiting on the infrastructure assessment to really see what our plan is moving forward before we approach these entities and these agencies. But they have been made aware of our plan. They are aware that we are putting together an RFP for this infrastructure assessment, as well as our regional entities such as Three Valleys. And again, once we have a final report, the idea is to approach these different entities and develop more strategic partnerships to be able to help carry out some of those projects.
So thank you for that, because I think it's important that we work with our neighbors. Secondly is we have the 4 inactive wells. If we were to get those online somehow, we have a number of conditions and things we have to deal with as far as where the water would go, has to be probably, the ones in Urbandale need to be cleaned. And so it's for potable water. But the issue that we have basically is piping for it, because we're making some changes of where that could go. How big of an issue is the piping for getting that water where it needs to go? And where does it need to go? Have we had any thoughts on that?
Yes, that is a big undertaking. Bringing the well up to date and back online is one aspect of it. The other aspect is actually being able to convey it up here, most likely to our St. Gabriel plant. But again, that's something that will be included in the study. And so, Michael, there's several options for that. Number one, again, we can partner with our adjacent municipalities. I know CIC already has an existing 30-inch pipeline actually running from Urbandale up to Azusa. So we may be able to potentially utilize some sort of strategic partnership to use their line, or perhaps some sort of exchange program where we can partner with Urbandale or Azusa to dump water into their system and take water up here at the Englandora. So there's a number of options. However, it will be a significant undertaking, one which we will evaluate closely.
In your time here so far, I know it's a big undertaking to find out where all our assets are, what we're doing, what we have done. Have a 30,000 foot view of kind of where we're going to be going? Because I think that we have a lot of assets. We've done fairly well with our water department, trying to think ahead, but takes resources. Is there anything that pops out of something that we should be possibly concentrating on, whether on the upfront while we're working on the assessment?
Absolutely. We have a number of infrastructures that are immensely deteriorated. Number one is our North Glendora tank. I think in the meantime, while we are putting this infrastructure assessment together, we can certainly evaluate what we need to do to bring some of those deteriorated infrastructures up to date per state mandates. So that's number one, is continuing to manage our system, continuing to manage our pipelines, our storage systems, until we have a comprehensive outlook in terms of what we need to do to bring everything up to speed.
So I have two more questions really quick. Then on the presentation you made has an overlay of what's going on with the state and somewhat locally and how it intertwines a little bit with Glendora. How much of your presentation are we or our future depending upon what happens statewide and regionally?
Correct. So, again, 25% of our water comes from the state. That's through the Colorado River aqueduct, and as well as the California aqueduct in Upper Sierras. And basically, we purchase our imported water supply from three valleys. Again, that's 25%. The remaining 75% comes from our local ground basin, which is managed by the Maine San Gabriel Water Master. And again, that facility is seeing its toll. Currently, I believe the elevation level for the key well is about 184. Typically, we like to be around 200 feet, 200 to 250 feet. So again, both of our local and imported supplies are feeling their toll due to this drought. It's just a matter of really demand management, asking our constituents to conserve as much as they can and utilize water responsibly. So
last question for you, this segment is Purple Pipe. Is that entering into any discussions at this point?
That is to be determined. I can certainly look into that and get back to you, Michael.
Okay, great. Thank you again for your presentations. Well done.
Sure.
Thank you, Councilmember Thompson.
Madam Mayor, thank you. And I want to echo everything that Michael said. You have nailed this. I think probably for the first time in my 5.5 years, this has been the best assessment of where we are. So super work, and thank you for all of that. Michael did touch on some of the questions that I have, but I'd like to go back to just a couple of areas on those 4 wells. So is there a capacity within those wells if we were to get them up and going? Or are they basically dry?
Evia, can you go back to that the slide with the that shows our wells? Okay, so Mando, so the 3 wells that are currently offline in Urbandale, that is not a capacity issue. That is purely a contamination issue.
Right.
So essentially, if we're able to engage in a project in which we can actually clean up those wells and treat those wells, we can produce approximately 2,000 GPM from those wells, which is more than adequate.
Okay,
However, so that will be actually a brand new source of water for the city. However, the one inactive well in Glendora, the red circle there in Glendora, that is a capacity issue. So
Okay.
basically meaning that is not a contaminant, although there are some nitrate issue, which can easily be solved through blending. That is a capacity issue, meaning no matter how, how the depth of the well or how deep we dig that well, hydrologically speaking, we simply cannot produce as much. I think the most we can produce out of that well is about 200 GPMs.
Okay. In a perfect world, how long would it take to get the Urbandale wells up and going? I mean, I know that they're toxic and there's a lot of work done and a lot of money to be spent, but what would be your best guess if we were able to get those things going?
That is a very hard question to answer, Mendel, because there's a number of variances. Number one is we certainly have to apply for grants. I think there's a number of grants available for us to take advantage
Right.
of. So it depends on the scheduling of those grants. Number one is, and then secondly is the strategic partnerships we're looking to engage in with either Three Valleys, Azusa, and there's that really in terms of trying to pinpoint what that timeline looks like. It's hard to tell. But as far as the actual construction work, that could be done fairly quickly. And when I say fairly quickly, I mean within a year or so to really clean up the wells and treat the contaminants. But a lot of it is just the pre-work that's involved in actually developing the partnerships to do so.
Right. Okay. Two additional things. Field turf. The council has talked some with you about this. So how close are we to thinking about removing some of the field turf and replacing it with, AstroTurf?
Very close. Actually, as we speak, I know we're working very closely with our assistant city manager, Moises, to really look at partnering with a lot of our schools, a lot of our educational institutions, and engaging them to see how much of their turf that they will be willing to remove or to convert to artificial turf. Also, Metropolitan recently just passed a resolution that allows public entities such as the city of Glendora, 200,000 square feet of turf to remove from public facilities. So our water yards, our street yards, our city hall. So that's free money in which we're actually looking to take advantage of. And I'm sure Mondo will talk about that in his presentation. So we're actively engaged from all angles to manage demand through turf removal.
Great, thank you. The last thing that I want to ask about, and I don't know if this is just fake news or real news, but I've been hearing that the state has even thought about going out and seeding clouds. Is that something that's real? Is that something that could be done? Is that something that's being really thought of, or is that just people that are kind of just saying that, hey, this could work and let's go try it?
Personally, I haven't heard anything about that, Mando. I would have to read closely into that legislation before I can speak on it, but I haven't heard anything of that nature.
Okay, all right. Well, once again, thank you. Super job. I appreciate it. And that's all. Thank you.
We're going to have to get you on a different news station, Mr. Thompson.
No, well, yeah, that's why. I mean, this was on like ABC News, just, and I thought, well, is this like fake news or voodoo science or what? So I just didn't know. So
yeah, no, thanks for asking that.
Anyway,
Councilman
thanks.
Urbandale.
Hi, thank you, Chisholm. And all the remarks that are made are spot on and concerning, and the mayor's thought about sobering realities is so true. I think a concern about this time, and certainly, none of this happens overnight. The drought didn't start overnight, but several years. And in our education process, I think we need to be very concerned about not putting our residents into sticker shock and having them understand why we're needing to do this and what it's about. And I know you're conscious of that. It's the only real question I have because everybody's hitting good points. Looking into your crystal ball, are we confident that our current infrastructure will withstand the time needed to get in and make these determinations and surveys and make a plan for improvements? I know we have springs popping up all over the streets in town periodically as it is, but
Right, right. Well, we're as confident as we can be that we have a dedicated team that can tend to a lot of those leaks as they come up. However, I think with this infrastructure assessment will help our team to be proactive as opposed to reactive, in terms of not waiting for leaks to come up, or, if there's a calamity, we want to make sure that we have enough storage in our capacity to last 10 days, 2 weeks if we need to, as opposed to, I think this infrastructure assessment will make us that much more confident in our system.
okay, well, thanks for the information, and it's not pretty, but do keep it coming. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Boyer?
Thanks, Karen. First comment is Mendel, they actually do participate in cloud seeding in Santa Barbara County. When I was up there, and I just Googled it real quick to make sure I didn't embarrass myself, but they've been doing it since 1981. And what they try to do, they try to get the clouds as they come in from over the ocean to produce the rain before it goes over their mountain range up there. So they try to get it on the west side of the mountain range. So you get a chance, Google it. It is something that happens. It doesn't really produce a whole lot of new rain. It just helps to get it to places where they'd like for it to be. But anyway, so it is a thing. Chisholm, great presentation. I love the details that you went into, but I do have a couple of questions. First off, you talked about 3 new positions that we need in the water department. So a question I have, do you know, are those positions that we have had in the past that maybe were eliminated at one time or another because of budget concerns, or are they new positions that we think we need now because things have changed?
So a couple of them are new positions, actually both, Gary. So a couple of them are new positions and a couple of them are reclassifications, meaning we are bumping from a senior management analyst to a senior management analyst. And really that is our conservation manager, basically with the pending drought and the really, focusing on drought management, we want to make sure that we're in the forefront of conservation. And so that we reclassified that as a senior because we want to bring in somebody who is really forward thinking and focused on developing programs, innovative programs to help us manage our demands. Another position that we reclassified, or actually is a new position, is our lead operator. We've never had a lead production operator in the past. And again, this is really to be able to cross-train and allow folks to be able to specify on operations as opposed to multitasking. And we feel it would be very beneficial for our division. And then, lastly is our CIP manager. That is, again, a new position based off of the number of projects and programs that's going to come out of this assessment. We felt the need to really have somebody in place to adequately manage these capital projects as they come up, from conception to final inspection.
Yeah, I appreciate it because I know, over the years, there have been some staffing cuts at the city for various reasons as money's become tight. So I'm just curious as to whether or not we made cuts that maybe we shouldn't have made in the past. But the other thing I wanted to talk about is we do the rate plan assessment. For me, it's extremely important that we get a clear direction. Sometimes when we go to do these rate plan assessments, we have a tendency to compare rates to other agencies and what we can do to try to limit the increase that may be needed. And I think it's really time for us to have a heart-to-heart with the residents and make sure that they understand that, hey, there have been a lot of deferred maintenance in our system over the last 20, 30 years. And we need to take a hard look at it and see exactly what it's going to cost if we want to get everything up to where it needs to be over, whether it be the next 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, as opposed to just trying to continue to tread water. So hopefully, as we do that assessment, we take a look at that on both sides, because we don't want to overwhelm residents, but at the same time, we don't want to push this ball down the street any further and put it off on somebody else. So I think it's really important that we do have that conversation as we go through this process. But that's it. Bottom line, great presentation. I appreciate everything that you brought to the table here. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Chair Nakano, I'll turn it over to you to ask the commissioners if they have any comments or questions.
Thank you, Mayor Davis. I'd like to start with Commissioner Armel.
All right, thanks, Justin. Chisholm, I'll just echo what everybody said. I really enjoyed the presentation and appreciate your patience fielding all of the questions from everybody. I know it's a little bit larger group than normal, but I wanted to touch on one thing that is a little concerning, is just the timing, especially with the passing of the infrastructure bill recently and the $55 billion that's allocated to water infrastructure. You know, typically we see those funds go to project ready programs that are ready, or at least have a preliminary design report already completed or released through their CEQA. I just didn't know if there's anything that we could do to streamline or be ready to put ourselves in position to be able to receive some of these funds. It seems like projects, specifically the Urbandale wells, that we have an understanding that they need treatment and some sort of a treatment system in place to be able to receive that water for the system. Whether we exchange it or build infrastructure to get it to Glendora is another discussion. But it seems like we know that those wells need to be treated, that potentially some preliminary design report or scope of work could be streamlined and started. That way, when the funding is released for grant applications, that we at least have some PDRs in place and CEQA may have been completed. So we're considered in that bucket of like project ready infrastructure to be built, to give ourselves at least a good chance at receiving some of those funds. So that was one comment that I wanted to make. And then another question I had is, you mentioned the level of the key well being at like 184 feet. I know we have different levels within our basin where we start sucking air within our wells. And how do those correlate to, even if key well is at an acceptable level within the basin, what's a critical level for Glendora? So when we're starting to see that level where it's critical for us, where we're starting to suck air and lose capacity on current wells that are producing for us.
Yeah, no, great questions, Ben. So to tackle your first question, you are absolutely right that there's a number of infrastructure grant programs available for shovel-ready projects. And so, you know, within this assessment, one of the first items, you know, along with some of our infrastructure that really needs attention, is grant allocation, being able to acquire certain grants and really evaluate what it's going to take to be put ourselves in a position to acquire certain grants. And that is something that we will convey to the consultant, is really look at what is, you know, shovel-ready projects, and, you know, can this infrastructure assessment be considered as a shovel, you know, potentially shovel-ready project to be able to put us in a position to seek out some of these grants. So that's going to be in the forefront. You know, you're absolutely correct in the levels at the key well. Again, I always describe the main San Gabriel Basin as a bowl. You know, where in the center of the bowl is the deepest part of the basin, and Glendora, we're in the Upper Canyon Basin, so we're on the outside of the bowl. You know, essentially where it's essentially shallow. So our wells are much more sensitive to drought conditions and things of that nature. So you are absolutely right in that we actually start seeing impacts to our wells at a much higher elevation than 184. You know. And again, that is why it's immensely critical for us to really evaluate bringing some of those wells, you know, farther south in Urbandale back online, because essentially we will have multiple sources and we can mitigate that elevation issue that we typically experience. You know, and so just because the key well is at 184, and again, it's not impacting folks in the center of the water table there. It severely impacts us here at Glendora because we are in the shallow part of the basin. And so we've actually had to shut off a couple of our wells due to that.
Thanks, Chisholm.
All right, thank you. Do we have any comments from Commissioner Shaw?
Yeah, thanks, Justin. Same as everybody, Chisholm, great presentation. I'm gonna have to steal some of these slides for myself. Well done. I have two questions. I'll try not to repeat some of the other questions. First, if I heard you right, through the rate study, are you gonna actually be looking at new rate structure?
Correct.
And if so, could you give an example of maybe what you guys are thinking or what that legislation might require in the future?
Well, I mean, the rate structure, again, it really, number one, we have to look at our existing rate. I think we want to provide a rate structure that's going to put us in a position to be able to adequately fund and subsidize all of our projects, capital projects, and some other city functions that we currently have in place. And that's something, again, until we start that evaluation process, it's really hard to tell what that looks like. But again, we just want to make sure that we're able to adequately fund the projects that we have coming out of this assessment, in addition to our, our regular projects, maintenance and operations, and things of that nature.
If I may just add in really quickly, and I should have cut in when we talked earlier about costs and everything else. And hello, everyone, this evening. Thank you so much for joining us, Adam Raymond, City Manager, and putting on my former CFO hat for pretty large utilities. One of the things that we look at in the rate study is the cost captured up front. We have the RTS fee that's pretty significant now in our rate structure. And I think, Ryan, that may be what you were hitting at. And so we'll assess that. And the other thing that we've not done of late is issue debt for capital projects. And I think as really we approach the 2028 Olympics and the sort of the labor shortage becomes even greater for some of our capital projects. One of the things we may want to consider in a rate structure is what debt issuance looks like to try to front load some of these major projects, which, Ben, I think would go a long way to help from our federal funding from a shovel-ready project. We actually had an item before City Council for our CIP in November, and Allison and her staff will bring back a second item on CIP in December, where we talk about the need for a design work up front and finding a way to fund a lot of those projects. So when the grant funding is available, that we can do a lot of those things. So I think we'll look at the evaluation as was mentioned previously, maybe 2 or 3 different areas where we have infrastructure. Here's the gold standard, here's the Chevy standard, and here's the Yugo standard, and what each one of those costs and the way that we go about it. So I think we're going to evaluate everything. And I appreciate the comments, Ryan and Ben. I think those are both spot on and things that we will assess as we go forward with our infrastructure assessment.
Appreciate that from both of you. Good answers, makes sense to me. I did have one other one, and it might not be a fair question, but Chisholm, what do you think is the biggest trigger of water supply that might cause us to ask our customers to cut back, rationing? Is it a governor mandate? Is it a metropolitan mandate? Is it we can't build those inactive wells? All of the above?
Most definitely all of the above. I think, it's really hard to tell with our constituents. People respond differently to different messaging. Some people respond differently to, what Governor Newsom just mandated us to ration our water by 15%. However, that may not hit home with some other folks. So it really just depends. And that's why we really try to hit it from all angles, in our messaging. We're very strategic, and Mondo will talk about that here in a little bit. We're very strategic in terms of how we engage with our customers and our residents. We don't want to overwhelm them, but at the same time, we want to be able to convey the urgency of demand management and do it in a manner in which they can understand how it impacts them. So again, to answer your question, Ryan, it really is all of the above.
Great, thank you.
All right, thank you. Vice Chair Hansen.
Yeah, Chisholm, great presentation. I do have a couple of questions. One, you mentioned the St. Gabriel plant. Do you know the present condition of the St. Gabriel plant and versus the worst case scenario the city's seen?
Well, the present condition, it's producing water, and there's a number of projects, I call them bandage projects that we're currently undertaking. Number one is the replacement of our chlorination pumps. Earlier this year, we had an incident where we had a chlorine spill in our plants. So really, a lot of it is not only replacing those pumps, but making sure that they're up to code. For example, some of our pumps needs to be elevated a certain level above the ground level in order to be able to be up to regulations and code. So some of those are just some quick fixes in which we're undertaking. However, again, with this infrastructure assessment, we'll look at it from a holistic, comprehensive perspective in terms of, not just a Band-Aid fix, but what do we really need to do to our San Gabriel plant to bring it up to code and regulations and to optimize its production and efficiency.
Okay, great. The other, it's more of a comment, not a question, is regarding my primary focus is to make sure that the city is as self-sufficient as possible. And the city's done a great job over the last several years of not purchasing any treated import water from Three Valleys Municipal Water District. So they've done a great job in that fashion. But the way to do that, I think, would be to look at the Vosburg and the Urbandale wells and put those back into operation. But you are going to need partnerships. And I would suggest you've already mentioned them, but you'd look to Three Valleys to build and operate it with their T5 operators, and then have a water supply for the western portion of their district and the southwest, including the Walnut Valley Water District and the Roland Water District. Because the treatment plant, to be most cost effective, you need to run it nearly 100% capacity 24/7. And the city certainly isn't going to need that supply. But as we go forward, looking forward years ahead, the MWD Sanitation District Carson project, when they bring the reclaimed water up to the Santa Fe spreading grounds, that's where most of the spreading is going to take place. And so that spreading would benefit both the Vosburg and the Urbandale wells. And they're very high producing wells, as you've noted. The San Gabriel wells, when the groundwater table goes down, they lose production. The Glendora Basin wells are very small producers. So the real opportunity for the city is to be looking at the Urbandale and Vosburg wells in the future. So that's all my comments.
Thank you, Rick.
Thank you. And just for myself, just a couple comments. At the Water Commission, we definitely want to drive home the point that there is a drought emergency coming. And as with all emergencies, there will be more grant funding opportunities. And I think Chisholm touched up on a lot of these quite well. And we also need to acknowledge that we've been through a drought before, not even 10 years ago. And our city has responded, and our citizens have done really well. But we're kind of back into it by no fault of our own, except for the weather. But I'm very encouraged by this presentation and this plan, and the staffing thing that Mayor Pro Tem Boyer brought up has always been a concern for me. So I'm glad that the City Council is acknowledging things on both ends. So appreciate it.
Thank you, Chair Nakano, and thank you, commissioners. Again, lots of great information and lots of great questions. This takes us to our second item for this evening, water conservation update, turf removal program modifications. And the person with the answers, the most popular person of the hour, the Water Conservation Officer, Armando de Jesus, to report. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Mayor Davis. Good evening, Council and Water Commissioners. I will be giving the Water Conservation update to give you an overview of our current programs and recent modifications that we've made to our turf removal program. Next slide, please. With our rebate program, so this is the rebate that rebates toilets, dishwashers, washing machines, aeration controllers, rain barrels. So in the first quarter of this fiscal year, we already rebated over $11,891 worth of items. There were 49 applications, and 100 of them, those were physically inspected to verify that the items were actually installed in their properties. Next slide, please. Our turf removal program. So this is our program that is taking, everyone's actually doing the program right now. We have a lot of people participating. So the water conservation section has reinstated the turf removal program as of July 1st to expand residents' opportunities to save water and reduce their water bills. The requirements are simple. Replace existing live turf and replace it with something drought tolerant landscaping, regardless if it's artificial turf or if it's a desert scape. And they can receive up to $4,000. So it's $2 a square foot, up to 2,000 square feet. During the first couple of months of reinstating the program, we received feedback from residents regarding our requirements. Our number one requirement for the turf removal program is that the participant must have living grass in order to qualify. Due to the current drought, a lot of our residents have made the decision to stop watering the grass prior to submitting the application. And by the time staff goes out to the property to conduct a pre-inspection, the grass is completely dead or it's no longer classified as living, and it ends up not qualifying for the program anymore. So residents felt it was unfair for the city to ask them to keep their grass green while they wait for an approval. At the end of the day, our main goal is to conserve water. So staff has decided to make a major change to the program that we've been handling for many years. So as of October 19th, turf that is dead or dying from lack of irrigation due to the current drought conditions will qualify for a rebate. Bare dirt or soil does not qualify for the rebate. We will be adding a frequently asked questions section in the city website, showing pictures of what is considered acceptable and not acceptable turf conditions, along with common questions that we receive on a daily basis. In addition to the program change, we previously only rebated the costs for the materials that were being used towards the completion of the project, such as rocks, mulch, plants, weed barrier, vendor boards, etc. Basically, anything that's visible that we're going to go out there, we're going to see for the completion of the project. The program did not rebate the cost for the actual removal of the turf, nor the disposal, nor the cost of labor. We basically mimicked our regular rebate program, which only rebates the actual item and not any of the labor involved for the installation. So the cost of removal and disposal is one of the most expensive items to actually complete a project based on receipts that we've been receiving from residents. So staff is now including the costs for the removal of the turf, disposal of the turf, and the cost of labor. So basically, any cost that the resident is paying for the completion of the project, we will not accept. As long as they can provide proof of purchase at the end of the project, we will accept it now. So that's one of the major changes. Next slide, please. So in the first quarter of the fiscal year, we approved 33 projects. Approximately 49,860 square feet have been allocated already for removal. 30 projects were completed in the first 30 months, and we rebated over almost $12,000 back to our residents. As of today, 18 residents have completed their projects, and we currently have 37 projects awaiting completion. Next slide, please. So this is just an example, some before and after pictures of this is actually the first resident that submitted the application, the first one to complete. So just simple project, remove existing turf with artificial turf. Next slide, please. Same thing. This was actually a really big project. I believe he removed over 3,000 square feet, and now he replaced it with artificial turf. Next slide, please. Same thing, only there's a mixture of artificial turf and rock and some decorative rock and some drought tolerant plants right at the front right there. Next slide, please. Our water use efficiency surveys, as we call in-house, we call them WEES. In the first quarter of the fiscal year, we performed 64 water surveys. Out of those, 49 were addressing issues related to higher than normal water bills. 19 were addressing concerning related to content consumption. Next slide, please. These are our green tag violations. So in the first quarter, we gave 105 green tag violations during the first 3 months of the fiscal year. These violations mostly consisted of broken sprinklers and excessive runoff, which commonly go hand in hand. Next slide, please. Our upcoming conservation plans. Staff is currently looking at our park and city facilities for potential conversion projects. As Chisholm explained before, we just received information from Metropolitan Water District regarding their turf removal program. They are extending their program to public agencies to incentivize removing excess turf in large parks or public building complexes. The current proposal is $30 per square foot up to 200,000 square feet. So there's a potential of $600,000 funding that the city could potentially receive. So these fundings won't be released until early 2022. So staff is meeting with various city departments in the next upcoming weeks to come up with a shelf-ready project before the fundings are released. So that way, but as soon as those fundings are released, we have everything ready for them. Staff has created a list of the top water users in town. We will be reaching out to those high users and offer them our services and offer any ideas on how we can reduce our water usage. Chisholm and I will be meeting with the Glendora Water School District at the end of the week to start discussing those potential turf removal projects at different sites in Glendora. Metropolitan Water District has brought back their turf removal program. So the city is currently collaborating with the member agency through Three Valleys on possibly combining both of our turf removal programs to give our residents an even bigger cash incentive as we previously did in 2014 during the last drought. So currently NWD's turf removal program is $2 per square foot. With their social media expansion, we are endeavoring to expand our new outreach program. So this will be done through creation of an educational series or educational video series. The videos are planned to be released about every other month over the next 2 years to teach residents about Glendora water system and why it is important to conserve. So far, we have released 2 educational water videos, and they are available to watch on the city's YouTube channel. We will also be using the city's social media accounts to promote water conservation strategies. Greg Morton, our digital media specialist, released a video last week on Facebook and Instagram that received over 1,500 views already in the first 2-3 days. So it's already making its rounds, and people know that the drought is here. So the message was really simple with a little bit of humor to let our residents know that the drought is back and we need immediate action by all Californians and Glendorans to start conserving now. We will be releasing another post within the next couple of weeks to continue promoting the drought. And during the last drought, we received a lot of feedback from residents saying that they felt overwhelmed with the amount of letters they were receiving from the city. And we're attempting to minimize sending dry, repetitive information to prevent oversaturation of information to our residents. So we're stepping back and taking a different approach this time. So they will be informed of what's expected of them concerning the mandates, but a more educational approach and less of a stop using water or you're going to get fined approach. And currently the only emergency mandates that we have been declared is for the mandatory reduction of 15% water usage. If and when those mandates have been issued, we will be sending a direct mailer to all of our residents to inform them of those mandates. That's why they're aware exactly what's happening. And that concludes my presentation. Have any questions?
Thank you very much. Before I call on my colleagues to ask questions, you answered one of the most frequently asked questions, which is about whether or not the turf has to be living and green. The other most frequently asked is about if there's a limit. Let's say, you have 39 residents that you've assisted so far and 50 more apply, but you're only going to take 25. That's one of the questions people ask is, is time running out? Should I do it right away? So what would you say to those folks?
Currently, we are constrained with a certain budget. So majority of the time, we do let them know if when you're ready to start your project, please give us a call before you start removing anything. That way they can double check with us to see if we still have funding available.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Councilmember Friedendahl.
Thanks, Armando. Great information. And I only have one question. You alluded that there's a possibility that a resident could apply for and qualify for both the city and MWD removal programs. Am I hearing that correct?
That is correct. So in the past, we actually ran MWD's program with them. We did all the legwork and did all the inspections. All we did was provide an address and provide square footage of what was removed, and MWD would cut a check to the resident. So we did all of that. So this time around, we're doing things a little differently. So we are still in the middle of talking to them about what rules apply to our program versus what they require. One of the big rules that they have with their program is that they do not accept artificial turf. So that's something that we need to discuss with them to see what we could do, maybe to persuade residents to not include or not install artificial turf and go more of a drought friendly landscaping, or still give that option to the residents. If you still want to do the artificial turf, you would only qualify for this one. So I believe in the next week or so, we'll be sitting down with them to kind of iron all the information so we can get this program out to our residents.
Okay, great. Thank you. And keep that information coming. Appreciate it much. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councilmember Thompson.
Madam Mayor, thank you, and excellent work here. I was wanting to ask you, wanted to say this first. Thank you for listening and adjusting some, of these rules. Really appreciate that, and I know the citizens do too. So thank you for employing some common sense rules here and really responding to what folks have asked. The question that I have, and excuse me for not knowing this, but what is the budget that you currently have? The mayor asked about that. So can you tell us what the dollars are that you're currently up against?
Of course, currently our budget is $150,000, and I can tell you that we've already reached that funding already. So I know we are looking for additional funding through grants to see if we could extend that amount.
And is the money that you alluded to coming from the city, or are those grant funds?
The current funding that we are using is actually through the city's funding that we allocated for this fiscal year.
Okay. Well, Adam, maybe we should think about extending that a little bit more. But otherwise,
I'm sorry, Councilman.
No.
I would just say some of the initial conversations I've had with Allison and Chisholm is, let's find a way to help out as many people as we can, especially with the drought restrictions that are coming up. So I foresee a time when we come before you for our mid-year appropriation request to check out the budget and see what we have and see where we can make movement on that front.
Okay, great. Thank you. And with that, I think I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Boyer.
Thanks, Karen. I'm sorry. The question I have is as we sort of take a look at these numbers, if have 33 approved projects for a total of 49,000 square feet of turf removal, and we look at the funds that are being allocated for that, it's a little bit questionable as to if the money being invested into this is worthwhile.
Mhm.
And I don't know if this has been reviewed and studied, but if there are some other projects or other types of incentives that we may need to be looking at, I'm sure the council would be open to other types of incentives, because sometimes we look at things and we think it's a good idea, but when you actually take a look at the dollars being spent, comparing it to the results that we're getting, it may or may not pencil out. So just a comment is, looking at your numbers, I'm sitting here thinking to myself, okay, is this really the best way to spend that money that we're allocating for that? There might be some other ideas that would be able to help with usage. So if there's anything that you guys think of or know about, please don't hesitate to bring it to our attention so it can be discussed. But
Absolutely.
that's really my only comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Alawas?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Armando, for your presentation. I have a few questions, and my colleagues had asked some of them. Maybe you can help us a little bit of confusion. This turf removal program, is this a spinoff of Metropolitan Water? I was under the impression this was Metropolitan Water District's program that we were implementing. So you're saying that this is only our program and has nothing to do with Metropolitan?
That is correct. This is a city-led program that has nothing to do with Metropolitan Water District.
So all the rules and regs that we put in place, are they uniquely ours, or did we borrow them?
We did borrow them based on past rules that Metropolitan did have in the past. And now that they brought their program back, they have made some major changes to their program that we didn't see fit with our residents. So we decided to keep it as is.
Did Metropolitan ever fund this program for us?
Yes, they did. They didn't fund our city side program. They added funding to our program. So if a resident was approved under our program for $2 per foot, they applied through their program, and there was an additional $2 incentive on top of that. But there were two separate budgets paying for those.
So to piggyback on what Gary, I guess, was trying to allude to, is there a square footage calculation based on turf removal and replacement of water used?
There is, but it's difficult to actually come up with to say the how much the resident or how much we're actually saving per square footage, and within a couple of months or a couple of weeks of completion. Usually takes about a year for us to look what their comparison of water usage was prior to that to the recent year or to the next year, and see how much water we've actually saved by doing these projects.
Do you have any anecdotal information? Because this has been going on for a number of years, of past analyzation.
With the current program, no, because it's too new. With the past program, if I'm being honest, the previous management analyst did run some numbers, and I do not know what those numbers are, but I could definitely look them up for you and get back to you with that answer.
Thank you for that. Out of curiosity, how many applications have been denied for various reasons?
Currently, it was, I believe it was 3, and it was residents. One resident had already completed the project prior to being approved. Another one had just bare soil, it was just dirt. And another resident just had a field of rocks. That's it. They actually did not have turf.
Okay.
So only those 3 residents have been denied.
So you mentioned that you're going to go out to maybe some top water users if things really get critical.
Correct.
What defines a top water user? Is it based on how big their property is or what their meter says, or how do you define that?
Based on their actual water usage.
So what if they have a large piece of property versus someone who has a small piece of property?
It will come up in that list because even though they do have a large property, they tend to be our top water users. Let's say, for instance, the city of Glendora, we are top water users because we have a lot of city sites. The school district would be another one because they have so many sites with a lot of grass. So, and they're larger properties. So larger properties usually equate having larger water bills.
So you're gonna have a conversation with yourself?
Yes, yes, we are actually. We are in the upcoming weeks. So we're trying to set a trend with not just telling residents to do their part, but the city wants to do our part too, to show that we're doing something.
So I have two other questions. Properties in the foothills obviously use different water than you have someone that's on flatter ground. Are you gonna make a determination or a sliding scale based on that information?
Not necessarily. What we're looking is basically just the numbers of the consumption that they're using for the property, not based on if it's on the hillside or if they do have an orange grove on properties. Certain properties still have those. So we're just taking their consumption as a consideration, not the location of the property.
So last question is, how does your green tag what's your green tag look like, and how does that program work? I mean, does somebody show up someday and there's a green tag on their door?
Basically, our green tag program is we do have a part-time water conservation officer driving around looking for any residents that it might have broken sprinklers, might have a sprinkler that's shooting out in the street that had no idea. So we take it more as an educational approach to let them know that they have something wrong. Because a lot of those sprinklers are normally start at 5 o'clock in the morning, assuming when most of us are asleep. So we will put a blue flag on whatever the issue is and then leave a green tag on our door, letting them know, hey, we noticed a broken sprinkler that's using a lot of water, just letting you know so you can repair it. And because you are using a lot of water.
Great. Thank you so much, Armando, for your presentation and your candid answers.
You're
And I will give some, if the end game is to save water, I will give anecdotal information that at the church, we took advantage of the program the last drought, and we saved a considerable water by replacing grass with the drought tolerant turf. So that was successful. And I know that 2 residents that live on my block also took advantage during the last drought, and they have saved considerable water by replacing their turf. So I think not always is it dollar to dollar, but it's what's our end game. If we're trying to save water, then sometimes we need to be creative in how we do that. So I think that is important to look at. So, and the water awareness too. Again, many thanks to the water department for letting us know that we were using more water than we needed to at the church and found a broken pipe, and that saved a lot of heartache. So the programs that you do are of great benefit to the community. So thank you very much. And with that, Chair Nakano, I'll invite you to call on the water commissioners.
Thank you, Mayor Davis. I'd like to call upon Commissioner Armel for question or comment.
I don't have any comments. Great presentation, Armando. Thank you.
All right, Commissioner Shaw.
I don't have anything either. Nice presentation.
Commissioner Vice Chair Hansen.
Yeah, Armando, a good presentation. Just one simple question with the continuing drought conditions. Is there any new rumble on the street about 20% conservation by 2020? Any new edict coming from Sacramento?
Not yet. We are still waiting to see what. Currently, it's 15%. It used to be the 2020, but they moved it down to 15%. But we're still hearing to see if that number is either decrease or increase. Currently, I can tell you that the city, we are surpassing that 50% at least for the past month. There's some months that we do well. There's other months that we don't do as well. But for the month of October, we reduced 19%, 19.8% water.
Yeah, I think when you look back at 2005, you're doing really well. But when you compare it to like last year or wherever, you come up a little bit short if the state were to implement 20% conservation.
That is correct. Early in the year, we did see some increase of numbers, and we could only assume was based on a lot of people working from home and a lot of the kids staying at home as well. Usually during the daytime, normally everyone's either at school or they're working, and now we did see a drastic increase during the first couple of months of the year. But now we're seeing that decrease now that more people are going back home, going back to work, and the kids are back to school as well. So hopefully that trend will continue.
In your opinion, looking at the crystal ball, can the city do better? Is there much more room for us to conserve?
Oh, absolutely. I personally see a lot of, at least with the city itself, city properties that tend to use a little bit more water than we should. So that's why we need to take a step back and start looking at our facilities as well, and start removing any excess areas that people don't even walk in, grasses. And that way we can set like a model for our residents to show them, hey, look, the city's doing their part as well.
Great. All right, thank you.
Sure.
Thank you. I just want to commend staff to, with the pandemic going on, a lot of the outreach opportunities that we normally have throughout the year, where it's in person fairs and whatnot, we haven't necessarily had those opportunities to do that. But staff still, is working harder with the social media and finding ways to continue to do their outreach. So I think that's a really great path, and just to continue to do that as well. So thank you for that.
Yes, thank you, Armando, for your presentation and for answering all those questions. Appreciate it. That takes us to item 3, presentation by Los Angeles County and Three Valleys Municipal Water District on PM 26A Service Connection Project Briefing. I'd like to invite from the Los Angeles County Flood Control District, Civil Engineer Ball.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Enrique Baul from Stormwater Planning Division of LA County Flood Control District. First of all, thank you very much for the opportunity to have the district come and talk about our project tonight. Next slide, please. First, I'd like to just give a little background about Public Works. Public Works is one of 37 departments of the County of Los Angeles, directed by the Board of Supervisors to provide service to the public. Public Works designs, builds, and maintains transportation and flood control infrastructures, and provides municipal services to the county unincorporated area, such as building and safety, waste management, sewer maintenance, and traffic signals and street lighting. As I mentioned, thank you again for having us here tonight to talk about the Big Dalton Spreading Grounds Improvement Projects. Next slide, please. I'd also like to talk a little bit about Flood Control District. The Flood Control District has a dual mission of flood risk management and water conservation, and serves 10 million residences over 2,700 square miles. The district owns and operates the following systems. We have 14 major dams, 26 spreading grounds, 500 miles of open channels, 3,000 miles of storm drain, over 150 debris basin, and an extensive seawater barrier system. Next slide, please. Now I'd like to talk about the project. What you see here is a map, very familiar with Glendora. Specifically, the project is located near the intersection of Glendora Mountain Road and Big Dalton Canyon Road, next to the city's equestrian park. Next slide, please. What you see here is just an aerial overview of the facility. I'll specifically point out a couple of the facilities. On the left bottom corner, you'll see Little Dalton Spreading Grounds. Little Dalton Spreading Grounds, that's not where our project is, but I wanted to point that out because the Little Dalton Spreading Grounds is made up of 12 small basins. And this is where PM 26, the imported water delivery from the Three Valleys MWD is delivered. And it is delivered and percolated into the Glendora groundwater basin. our project is to the right of that. You'll see it, all that is Big Dalton SG. So Big Dalton Spreading Grounds, currently, the way it's configured right now, is made up of 9 basins. And actually, on the right side of the facility, we do have some basins that have been abandoned that's not being used. The reason that they were abandoned a few years back is that we noticed that there was some seepage coming through the wall of the channel. And so this is where our project improvements is targeted for. And also, just to let you know, there is also the Big Dalton Debris Basin Dam just upstream of our facility. And so that is where currently, that is where the water that is spread in Big Dalton Spreading Grounds, that's where it's released from. Next slide, please. The project is made up of 4 components: basin improvements, the 30-inch pipeline installation for imported water between PM26 and the improved Big Dalton Spreading Grounds. We have improvements to the diversion structure. And 4th would be the multi-use amenities for the local community and residents. Next slide, please. I'd like to talk about this slide is just a concept of the improvements. With the other slide, I showed that, you could see that there are 9 basins. Well, once the improvements are completed, the project will convert the existing basins and the abandoned basins into 3 larger and deeper basins. Once the project is completed, the storage will increase from the existing 12 acre-feet to approximately 37 acre-feet. Just as a visual, to help visualize the improvements, if you could picture a football field with 1 foot of water, that represents approximately 1 acre-feet. So currently we're able to, the capacity is 12 of those, right? So we're gonna go from 12 to 37 acre-feet. So that's a significant improvement in capacity. And what that will result in is that it'll bump our current average amount of stormwater conserved from 574 acre-feet to 1,944 acre-feet. So that's about an increase of 1,730 acre-feet. So if you could visualize that. So, and finally, as part of the basin improvements, we will also be constructing a 12-foot deep, 2-foot wide slurry wall. And the purpose of that wall would be to address the seepage concerns. Next slide, please. Okay, so at this point of the presentation, I'd like to invite 3 Valleys to talk about the next few slides about the imported water line.
Sure, thank you, Enrique. I'm Ben Peralta. I'm from 3 Valleys Water District. Thank you for the opportunity to discuss the pipeline and new metered connection with you. Basically, this map kind of shows some of the existing pipeline. It's that yellow one, and there's an existing MWD 30-inch pipeline, and that PM26 there, that's all existing and currently water outlets to Little Dalton Spreading Grounds through that pipeline. What we're proposing is to construct a new metered connection with a 30-inch pipeline. That's the red line you see there, and have it go across the MWD property, down the street, and into the new and improved Big Dalton Spreading Grounds. Next slide, please. So this graphic kind of shows the Little Dalton Spreading Grounds and Big Dalton Spreading Grounds. As you can see, Little Dalton Spreading Grounds is kind of narrow and has some smaller size basins. The proximate area of Little Dalton Spreading Grounds is about 5 acres, and the storage capacity is about 5 acre-feet. Now, the new and improved proposed Big Dalton Spreading Grounds would have almost 13 acres of surface area, and as Enrique said, 37 acre-feet of storage capacity. Next slide, please. So this slide shows 4 Glendora wells that are basically downstream of where the water would percolate to. That direction of groundwater flow is generally southwest, and Little Dalton and Big Dalton spreading grounds are pretty much parallel, you can say, and that blue thick arrow is the approximate direction of groundwater flow. So we envision or anticipate that wells, I think it says wells 2, 13, 10, and 11, which are basically downstream, further downstream to the southwest, could potentially improve from increased percolation from Big Dalton spreading grounds. And that little picture to the right there, that's an aerial picture from last Wednesday. We're actually spreading water in Little Dalton spreading grounds currently. And you see the series of basins, how they fill up and move downstream, essentially. The next slide, please. So some of the groundwater augmentation benefits. The current PM26 can deliver actually about 15 CFS, but Little Dalton spreading grounds can't take that capacity. The approximate capacity is about 6 CFS. And we've spoken with LA County flood control staff, the ones who are familiar with those basins, and that's kind of the number they're saying. For long term, it's about CFS, the percolation rate or recharge capacity of Little Dalton. With the with a new PM26A connection with a 30-inch pipe, that could potentially be quite a bit more higher flow rate, a 30 CFS connection, get more water going to the improved Big Dalton spreading grounds. That would allow you to recharge much more water over time, possibly up to 15,000 acre feet. And that could be resource development, assessment, and or replacement water. In addition, MDB might have the ability to pre-deliver water when we have wetter winters and there's higher state water project allocation years, unlike the one we're anticipating is going to be extremely low of 0%, as alluded in some of the earlier presentations. And we've actually asked on behalf of Glenn Chisholm, he'd like to have a better idea as to, what is it to quantify, how much more recharge, how is it going to benefit Glendora wells? So we've asked Watermaster to use their groundwater model and to better estimate, those benefits to the Glendora wells. So we anticipate that we'll get that information, and when we do receive it, we'll share that with Glendora staff. And I think that's all I have, but next slide, I think, is going to go back to Enrique. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. My apologies, I just had to unmute myself. So getting back to the discussion about the grounds improvements, the fourth portion of our project would be the multi-use amenities. And the amenities consist of park benches, new decorative access, localized landscaping, as you can see in the green areas of this rendering, interpretive and educational signage, a walking path throughout that's represented by the orange dash line around the proposed basins, and new fencing as needed. Next slide, please. Let's just talk about the project schedule. Just going back in July 2020, discussions with the project partners were initiated. And in January 2021, we initiated the design of the project, beginning with the survey. February 2021, initiated the environmental documents, and June 2021, the draft initial study was completed. The next steps for this project would be for summer of 2022, the completion of the environmental permits and compliance. And in August of 2022, complete the final plans and specification. That leads up to a construction start of spring of 2023, and completion of the construction would be winter 2023. And we're able to continue construction throughout the winter months because the Big Dalton spreading grounds is not a storm operated facility, so it's offline. So Next slide, please. Just an overview of the preliminary cost estimate. So the total project cost is about $8.2 million. With the one of the components of the project, the basin improvements, is about 2.3. The diversion structure modification is about the $250,000, with the multi-use amenities I mentioned with about $260,000. And the imported water line that Ben talked about, the installation of that is about $2.75 million. Next slide, please. Got a couple more costs here. So the planning and engineering cost is about $1.3 million, and the project and construction management cost just a little under $1 million. Aside from funding the project, the district funding the project, the additional funding sources are the Three Valleys and also the City of Glendora for the imported water pipeline installation of $2.75 million. And also the project also received a Prop 84 grant of $2.16 million. And as a condition of that grant, our target completion would be winter of 2023. And the next slide, please. And at this point, we'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Enrique, and thank you, Ben. That's exciting to look at those possibilities and what might be happening with that. Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Boyer.
Not really any questions. It's nice to get an update on this and get a chance to see what's going on up there. I guess there are questions as far as, with Glendora investing more than $1 million in this project, the actual benefit to the city. I think it's important that we get some clarity on that. If it's going to be producing additional water sources for us, I think that's extremely important. But it seems to me like it may be producing some additional water sources for a number of other agencies as well. So, I'm just looking forward to get some clarity on that so we can have a further discussion. But that's it. Thank you.
Councilmember Friedendahl.
Thank you, and I also echo that. So my understanding is the spreading ground improvements are underway currently. So the real discussion is whether we include the import line from the Three Valleys connection over to those spreading grounds. Is that correct?
Yes, the schedule for the project, the completion of the construction will be in winter of 2023, but we have started the initial portions of the design with environmental documentation, also with the geological studies for the project, but we are in the early stages of the project development with the target goal of 2023.
So if the import line is not included, is the spreading ground project going to move forward to increase its capacity?
A part of the project includes the imported water line. However, if without, even without the installation of new water line, we are going to see an increased annual water conservation. And the source of that water would be from the Big Dalton Dam upstream, and that would be the storm flow conservation.
Okay, because I have to admit my naivete and guilt in my short 30+ years in town, I've never seen that spreading ground have a cup of water in it. So shame on me if it had, I missed it. It's a neat project, but I also echo the concern that if we are replenishing, if we're paying for imported water to replenish a water table, but that's not our water that we're paying for, it could become water used by anybody downstream. I think we need more partners. So,
I may add, if I may, we have talked to some of the Glendora staff, and at least there's anecdotal evidence that when water has been spread in Little Dalton spreading grounds, that the nearby wells do benefit. They see more production out of the nearby wells downstream.
Good to know. Thank you for that. No more questions.
Thank you. Councilmember Alawas?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Enrique and Ben, for your presentation. I guess I'm going to cut to the chase on the $2.75 million. How much is Glendora going to have to pony up?
So the agreement or the thought between Three Valleys and Glendora is we would share 50-50, that evenly, that cost.
So I guess I'll go to our city manager. Adam, have we budgeted that 50-50 cost sharing?
So that will be part of an upcoming CIP project out of the capital fund that we have, where we currently have several million in reserve. But I think as we've gone through the process, it's better understanding the actual benefit to the city and over how long a period of time, and comparing that to the total cost structure up front. Also, as we do our assessment and are further into it, understanding if those dollars are more valuable on another project. So.
And I believe that Mr. Litchfield has his hand raised, that possibly to answer that question as well.
Yes, thank you, members of the council and members of the commission. Yes, right now we're proposing a 50-50 split on the capital cost of that new service connection. And keep in mind, there is a new service connection with Metropolitan on there, and which is a good chunk of the cost. So that is the current proposal. But where we want to go from here, what I'd like to at least get the point across is, in your analysis, each year through the assessments through Watermaster, through your resource development assessment, RDA, you're paying for that water in advance to the Watermaster each year through their assessment program. What this will allow Glendora to do will be able to, each year, the order that is placed through the Watermaster for your RDA assessment can be spread in different locations. I mean, you have the option for the Canyon spreading basins over in San Gabriel and Little Dalton spreading grounds that would benefit your wells. This additional project would give you another location for more additional water that would benefit your upper elevation wells. And as you can see, one of those wells are down because the water levels are so low. So this is just a piece of your supply portfolio in that pie chart that can be considered in your assessment. So I just wanted to make sure that was understood. And there's also more opportunity for Metropolitan when we have high state water project allocations, such as we did in 2019, where they pre-deliver water into the basin with a pre-arranged repayment program through the Watermaster. The other option that we could do is during those additional state water project high allocation years is Three Valleys, like we did in 2019, we purchased upwards of 10,000 acre feet of water and pre-delivered it into our cyclic storage account. So there's a lot of opportunities that this just opens up with this project to get more water to your upper elevation wells, which is obviously the cheapest water source that you have. So I just wanted to make that point and get that across. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. It was Chisholm had brought this up about possibly putting in a well in that area, since it's going to get recharged with a lot more volume of water. Do you see any issues with that?
I don't see if there would be any issues. It depends on where it's going to be located with respect to the new spreading grounds. Yeah, that would make a lot of sense if the city's going to make the investment with Three Valleys, that you may want to take advantage of a placement of another upper elevation well.
Well, since we're paying for the water, we may as well take it.
Agreed.
Is there a measuring device in that area of what the water levels are in the basin in that area?
I am not aware if there's any monitoring wells in that area. Perhaps the county knows of some. Enrique?
I'm not aware of any in that area either.
Yeah, I can speak to that, Michael. I think the only really for the main San Gabriel Basin is down in Baldwin Park is the key well. We don't have any measuring or barometer gauges here in the upper basin.
I was
Not
just
that I'm aware
wondering,
of.
since we're doing this, I was wondering what the baseline measurement might be before and after this improvement project.
Yeah, I think if there's in the absence of any monitoring wells, you certainly have your production wells that would give you at least a clue as to where the levels are directly down gradient from the current spreading grounds.
All right.
If I may, I'd like to also add some information, provide some information. The city of Sierra Madre, they own and operate their own spreading grounds. However, the source of their water is from our Santa Anita Dam. And they actually have a well, as well as a treatment plant on site. However, the footprint of their facility is quite large. And the current available space at the Big Dalton spreading grounds is rather small after the improvements are completed. And frankly, I'm not aware of any wells within the spreading grounds, or any of our spreading grounds at this time.
I think the proposed possible future well for Glendora might be somewhere within the equestrian park, possibly, just downstream of Big Dalton spreading ground. That was the thought, possibly.
And that makes sense.
Right.
So along these same lines, since you're going to increase the capacity of this, you have residents in the area, and you may have some large storms, and let's say you have some of those the spreading grounds filled up. What mitigation efforts do you have to keep from spilling over a flood in the areas?
Okay, so as far as when we have storms come through the area, and say for example it's a good storm year, so we do have the dam upstream to regulate the flow coming out, and then we also have the debris dam to hold and pond the water that can either be diverted into the spreading grounds, or we do have a spillway structure if needed over at the debris dam that will allow water down the Big Dalton Wash, but it won't be wasted to the ocean because we do have other facilities downstream that will capture that water and infiltrate it into the groundwater basin. And so, yes, we've had big storms back in 2010 where most of our dams had a lot of water. What we do is we make preemptive releases. And so we manage the level of water in our reservoirs in anticipation of the larger storms.
So I've got a bunch of questions. I'm gonna wrap up into kind of one question. Since I have the advantage of having three valleys and the Public Works here on is we talked a little bit of length about the wells that are inactive, particularly the ones in Urbandale. And I know that in the past, there's been some talk that Three Valleys would be interested in helping fund the cleanup efforts in the Urbandale facility. Is there still an appetite for Three Valleys to partner up and or to fund that cleanup and to move forward and to help Chisholm and his group with their long-term planning that they're going to be undertaking with assessments with an assessment? Is there an appetite still for Three Valleys to participate in either funding or finding some funding and helping us with this process and seeing how we can partner in the future?
Yes, Councilman, that there's still that appetite is there. In fact, we've worked with the city of Glendora in the past on the Urbandale wells. I'm sure Rick is well aware of that, to try to get that program up and running. Now that we have the infrastructure bill that has been signed into law, there's going to be other funding opportunities to potentially pursue, which we could take the lead on from a grant standpoint, and then and go from there. The other thing that that we could possibly engage in are arrangements such that either Three Valleys or just ourselves can actually operate the system on behalf of Glendora. Under our operating permit, we're pursuing another project with another one of our member agencies right now over in the Six Basins. So that's certainly a possibility and something that we're definitely have an appetite and continue to engage with.
Well, Chisholm, it sounds like you have a willing and able partner. Last question that I have is that, you know, no pun intended, it's trying to drink water from a fire hose with getting up to speed with water. And a lot of you folks have been doing this for quite some time and know all the acronyms and know how things work. What seems to be confusing a little bit to me is basic water rights. We have water rights from be able pumping, but then there's only so much we can pump. Then we have allocation rights that we're going to get. It gets a little convoluted as far as what you can do and the different abbreviations. And when you talk about pumping houses in different zones and areas, is there a possibility of of any of these groups here, Three Valleys or otherwise, or even Mr. Hansen here, since he was part of that in the past, to put together some sort of an educational little meeting perhaps, or seminar of sorts to help educate us on the council as far as how all this works, because you're talking about maybe an allocation of either 5% or 10% that we're going to get. Is that basically water coming down from other areas for our spreading grounds? And how does that affect our pumping rights and things of that nature? And how is that all regulated? It'd be very helpful for us to have that basic information. So going into this, when we get asked to approve either new personnel and or funding going out, we have a clearer picture of what that money is going to be spent with and what we can and can't do, what our parameters are. Is that a possibility, putting something like that together?
Councilman, I would just add that we do that on an annual basis with our budget. We would be happy to start with the Water Commission and board that we have here and provide that model, and maybe then we can help get feedback and provide that to the city council at an upcoming meeting.
If you think that's enough time to get educated on how this works.
I think we have the understanding on how that works for our access to water. If you want a broader perspective of other water rights, we probably need several volumes of papers and about 25 hours to sit down and discuss. So I think I have an idea of what you're looking for there. Be happy to work with public works staff and head to the board first and get their feedback on if that's helpful before returning to the city council with that information.
Sure, you have my request in. If Three Valleys wants to be part of that, that'd be wonderful, since they manage a lot of the water flow, if you will.
I promise I won't threaten Matt with taking him back to San Bernardino with me and reliving our days at the city. So we'd be happy to do that for you.
Thank you.
Yes. Are you finished, Councilman Alawas?
Yes, I am, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, and prior to the pandemic, Three Valleys was tremendous about offering a variety of educational opportunities. I think that the pandemic stopped some of those in-person meetings, but they have always done a great job of providing information and education. Councilmember Thompson, before I call on you, I did notice that Commissioner Hansen had his hand up. I didn't know if there was something that you wanted to ask or say.
I'll wait till my turns again.
Okay, all right, thanks. I just wanted you to know that I did see you and I wasn't ignoring you, sir. So thank you. Councilmember Thompson.
Madam Mayor, thank you. And Rick, you are more than happy to go ahead of me because you know so much more about this. But the only statement that I would make is, as has been said, I'm not sure that I'm up to speed and know all of the facts on this 2.75 split that's proposed, and not sure that I understand it. Not opposed to it. I can't say that I'm for it, but any additional facts would be good. And I would certainly support, as has just been said, and as Rick said an hour ago, that I really do think that now's the time, politically and with the money that's out there, to really make a effort to make sure that Urbandale dams are running, cleaned up, functional. Apparently, there's a lot of water there that we could use. And I think that for money spent, it seems like that we should attack those. So that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Chairman Nakano, I turn it over to you.
Thank you. Why don't we start with Vice Chair Hansen then?
Well, I raised my hand. For those of you that didn't grow up in Glendora before the homes were built, I just want to remind you that the community there got the name Hidden Springs for nothing. The basins are limited with how much water can be spread before springs pop up. This was back in the 60s, playing with making forts and dams and with springs popping up in the neighborhood. supportive of any engineering project. I'm a strong believer in operational flexibility. I built PM26 30 years ago, so I have a little history on what the size of it's actually a 20 CFS connection. And we have flown as much as 10 to 15 CFS over a limited period of time into the spreading grounds. But we ran probably about CFS over a 4-month period during the winter months. So that's over 2,000 acre feet of water spread in the Little Dalton spreading grounds. And when you take a look at Glendora's historical need for replenishment water in the main San Gabriel Basin, that is sufficient. That being said, I still think the project ought to be built. The one little difference when I was looking at it, Matt or Ben, we were just going to go right to the channel and dump the water in and then put a rubber dam downstream and then flow by gravity into the Big Dalton spreading grounds. Did you consider that at all, or is that not the most efficient way to operate?
We did.
Well,
That was part of
yeah.
the original concept. And in discussions with Department of Public Works, they had some hesitancy to maintaining a rubber dam in that channel. So we came up with this where we basically pipe the water all the way from the 30-inch pipeline across to Big Dalton spreading grounds. And I will say that we are still looking at possibly some other solutions, maybe a smaller 18-inch pipeline that uses the existing PM26 and plumbing it to Big Dalton spreading grounds. That would have lower capacity, but we'd avoid the cost possibly of a new metered structure. That cost is pretty significant.
You're still looking at pumping out of the connection?
No, we did some hydraulic modeling, preliminary hydraulic modeling, and we think that that kind of smaller pipe could have maybe 15 CFS, maybe a little bit more capacity.
Well, you probably need to work with MWD, because that was one of the problems we had initially is that the hydraulic grade line was so low, we got very little flow. When USG3 is flowing full flow, you will get no water out of PM26 unless you pump it out.
I agree. So I think the thought would be to wait until that delivery or when the flows are lower on that pipeline for sure.
Okay.
Yeah, we are looking, just to let you know, Rick, we are looking at that option. The nice thing about these Big Dalton spreading grounds improvements is they're deepening the basins. So what that does is that gives us a little more hydraulic gradient to potentially get the water down there, since they are providing that additional depth, which will provide more gradient on that pipe gravity line or a low pressure line down there. Our initial hydraulics calculations have shown that we can get 15 CFS, but there's a lot more work we still need to do. This is very preliminary at this point.
Yeah, correct. Yeah. I do know I've observed water seeping in through the channel walls and through the floor during high flow periods. So when the water has been spread there at the Big Dalton spreading ground, so deepening the pits would be very, very helpful. I guess the last thing, Matt, I don't want to throw you under the bus, but the last connection, big connection that was built was a connection to Covina Irrigating, and Three Valleys built and paid for that connection and rationalized it because it was a regional project, a regional benefit, because it was benefiting multiple agencies. This connection is the same thing. Every agency within the main San Gabriel Basin is going to benefit from water being spread in the main basin. So, I think that would be the approach. But, I heard the general manager, MWD general manager, talk about the wanting to do more in local facilities. So between the Metropolitan Water District and the main San Gabriel Basin Water Master, I think you should be able to get somebody to foot the bill for this.
I don't disagree with that. I am hearing that from Adele as well. And I've been thinking about approaching Metropolitan on that prospect, and also potentially the Water Master, because they do collect a lot of money through the RDA, and that's what it's for. Quite
Well,
frankly,
and- yeah.
it's for a recharge.
Yeah, and Tony years ago mentioned that he had money available for local projects. So he just needs to be given a project.
Be glad to give him one.
Yeah. Okay. That's all I have. Thanks.
The broad definition of or broad mutual benefit, right, Rick? Commissioner Shaw, comments, questions?
Yeah, thank you. Nice presentation. Glad to see the partnership moving forward. I won't bring up the cost benefit comments anymore. I think we beat that one to death. I agree with Rick. Getting water in the ground is a good project, assuming it's cost effective, especially given Chisholm's crystal ball on the drought going forward here. Any project that gets more water in the ground is probably a good thing to do. And I'll echo, I don't remember who said it, but continuing to pursue other project partners is probably a good idea, given the cost and the proposed split. But that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Armel.
Thanks, Justin. So my comment was related to timing and where the city's spending their funds and where it could be best allocated. But since Rick just did such a great job of negotiating the project being paid for by Three Valleys, I don't know if I necessarily need to go there. But I guess from broad, scope, looking at things, I just want to reiterate, any connection with Metropolitan, I think, is a huge, valuable asset to have. But I want to look at timing specifically because a connection through Metropolitan or Three Valleys into the spreading grounds is still imported water, where is the first that's going to be rationed as far as, drought and going to the next couple of years. So just for projects that we're looking at, I just want to make sure that we're looking at where we can best be allocating our funding that helps us immediately in the drought and not projects that benefit potentially 5 years. I think Rick mentioned that, the current take we could take is like 2,000 acre feet, which is more than sufficient, right now. It doesn't take away from the benefit, but I just want to make sure that we're paying attention to projects that we can allocate funds to, if it makes sense to shift some around, but to focus on projects like the Urbandale wells, where we could hopefully receive benefits sooner in the event that we are in this drought for the next 2 years. It's the only comment I have.
All right, thank you. I had a couple questions. So with this new connection going in, then the smaller basin is just going to be abandoned, or will it still be used, or will that connection still exist?
That would still be a Little Dalton spreading grounds, you mean? That would still be used. In fact, they could both be used, still, if moving forward, if the project is built.
Okay, and that's good. And then I would reference back to the map, but the Big Dalton spreading grounds would not only be used for imported water, but also from to recharge some releases from the dam as well. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yes.
Okay, so there's kind of a multi-use component to it. Okay. Yeah, I mean, for me, it seems like there's a cost share component that might get even better, whether it be through emergency drought funding or just talking with our partners. It's in a really great place in the basin. The artesian conditions are a bit of concern, as Rick brought up, but if we look at projects like that to capture water in the long term, there's really a long-term benefit to having stuff like that. So it's of my opinion that it's definitely something that we should continue looking into and potentially encourage to do. So there's only so much land out there for recharge, and if you can find opportunities to make improvements like that, I think it's a great step. So that's my only comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Nakano. I see that from the LA County Flood Control District, a representative has their hand raised.
Yeah, hi, this is Julian. I'm working with Eric, and I just wanted to, and actually the senior civil engineer for stormwater planning and the flood control district, and considered the watershed manager for the San Gabriel River. I just wanted to thank Eric for his presentation, and Ben, and an opportunity to present today. I did want to mention regarding the cost for the project and the grant of the 2.16 million that Eric mentioned, was that I think the grant is contingent on the project going forward. So when you make your decision, please keep that in mind. If we don't have import water, as the grant was applied for back in 2000, I want to say 2014 or so, the commitment was that we would have a import water component to it. And if I think that portion of the project is taken away, they would probably take the funds away from the project in total, because they give the grants based off of the application and that actual completed project. So please keep that in mind in your review and determination.
Thank you, Mr. Juarez. Mr. Alawas, did you have a question?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm not quite sure who to address this to, but on the overview map on page 44 of the presentation, just to the left of the Little Dalton debris basin, there's a Little Dalton SPS. I believe that's where all the sediment has been deposited over the years. I'm not 100% sure on that. I believe we were told it was full. Is there first off, who owns that? Secondly, is there any possibility of planting that with some trees? It's a bit of a scar on the side of a hill in the city. Is that ever going to be used ever again? Is there something we can do with that site?
Yes, so the Big Dalton sediment placement site has been used in the past by the district. I apologize, I don't have the latest information of the status of that facility, but I could certainly get back to the city and provide that information.
Do we know who owns that parcel of land?
I cannot be 100% certain, but I want to say that it may be a district facility. But I will need to get back, confirm that and get back to you.
Okay, and also confirm if it's still being used or not?
Yes, yes.
And if it's not being used, possibly get it planted and maybe novate it over to the city? Can we ask those questions?
Well, I'll certainly include that as part of my response, bring back some information about that.
Perfect, perfect. Thank you very much. That's all, Madam Mayor.
Yes, thank you. Well, thank you very much, Enrique, Ben, and Matt, for that presentation and for answering those many questions. We appreciate your time and your thoroughness. Also, many thanks to the Water Commission for joining us tonight for this meeting. We appreciate all that you do on a regular basis to handle these matters for us, and appreciate you meeting with us tonight to go over these very important presentations. At this time, I will adjourn the City Council meeting at 8:12 p.m. and invite Chair Nakano to adjourn the Water Commission.
Yeah, we'd really like to thank City Council for having us at this meeting. With that said, the Water Commission is now adjourned.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you,
Good night, everyone.
staff, for your time.